checklist for animator. What is it, what should be inside of it, and why do you need it, right? Hello guys, this is Alessandro, and I was talking with one of my students and I realized over and over sometimes what I have to tell them is okay, be careful about the arc, track the rotation of this, make sure you offset some part of the body, the arms, make sure everything is not moving all together. And it kind of reminds me at the beginning when I was studying, and I have one of my mentors who was very picky, okay, very picky, really wanted to push quality the same way I'm doing it today. And while I was studying with him, every time he was telling me something different. Okay, today you should check the arc, then the overlapping, make sure the finger animated in a certain way. And the amount of information was so much, guys, that I always have the feeling that, okay, at some point I'm always gonna forget something, because every time he's asking me to polish at different things, there are so many things I might forget, okay? So at some point I started to write things down, all the things that he told me, all the things that I learned by myself, that I start to realize were important to me. And I'm basically making a checklist. So now, anytime when I go and polish some part of the animation, and I always have this checklist next to me, so I'm gonna make sure I'm not gonna forget everything, and I'm trying to polish as best as I can. And I wanna share this with you guys. So first of all, one thing, I'm assuming that, at least for me, when I do and check all those things from the list, I do this at the end of the stage, okay? So mostly what I'm splining and polish it. So that mostly means that performance is solid, I have a good timing, pose are good, okay? All those things out of the way, I'm really confident they're good enough, and I'm just cleaning up and polishing, okay? So I will show you my thought process, okay? So basically the first things that I always start with is the root, okay? That's the most important, because 90% of the time, 95% of the time, everything starts from the root, okay? So that's the basic. It will affect your spine, your head, your arms if you move in FK, right? The arc of everything else. So it's the best that you fix that one immediately. And what you should do, what I mean by the root, you should start with the arc. Obviously it's the main things. You want to make sure the arc is smooth. Then I usually will go to the graph editor and I will check all the rotation order, right? All the X, Y, and Z in rotation. I make sure there are not flat edge unless I really wanted. There is the right amount of easy in, easy out. Timing is not too too flat. Just want to make sure, by the way, I'm polishing as much as possible, but at the same time I'm not losing the great pose that I did so far. And once that one is done, I will go to the hip, okay? So basically I will go to the lower part of the body, and I will start with the hip. Again, I will go to the graph editor mostly, check if everything is there, needs to be smoothed a little bit more, but mostly what is really important for the hip is that, especially at the beginning, I see a lot of animators not even animating the hip, especially when it comes to the tilt like this, especially when you're walking or keeping your weight on one side and your hip should tilt. Most of the time I will realize animator will even completely forget to doing it. So what I'm doing that when I check the hip on my list is actually want to make sure if I animated the hip correctly, okay? If anytime I move the weight of the body from here to one side, the hip will tilt properly, right? So I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And then again, in the graph editor, everything is kind of smooth and not everything is moving at the same time. Once I've done with that, I will go to the lower part of the hierarchy, in that case with the leg, okay? I will start with the, again, with the main controller of the leg. I want to make sure, first of all, the arc is smooth enough, okay? Arc is good, it's a clean trajectory and everything. The contact is where it's supposed to be on the foot, right? Again, I will go to the graph editor and check with all the rotation, there is not any weird rotation and weird pop. And then another thing that most people will forget is cleaning up or animating properly all those little controllers, which is basically will allow the foot roll on your foot. I'm not talking about just this one when you're lifting your foot, when you're doing a walk cycle. I mean, it could be also when you raise the heel, when you tilt it on the side. Because one of the things I notice is that one of the mistakes that a lot of people do is that they put a foot on the ground, and as long as the foot is on the ground, even if the character shifts left or right, they keep the foot completely locked, which is obviously wrong. If you take a video reference of yourself, you'll notice that as soon as you move your weight left or right or something, your foot is not completely locked on the ground, completely frozen. It will slightly shift a little bit like this. It will do those kind of movement. So I will, even though if I have to zoom with the camera really close, I want to make sure I do the best as possible and clean those things, okay, right? Then obviously I want to make sure that if I'm animating both feet, obviously they are not animating at the same time. For example, in a jump, or if you're swinging or something like Spider-Man or something, if you animating both legs going up and down in the jump, they're not going at the same time, right? Like maybe one of the legs are leading forward, and then this one is coming down when this one is still going up, having a bit of a drag in the rotation, right? If your foot is going up, having a bit of drag in the rotation and things like that, because it will make things more interesting, less rigid, I would say. And at the very end, once all this is done and it's very clean, I will take care of the popping. Okay, we know it's a struggle when we do animate the leg and everything, that you can see the knee popping or stuff like that. But I really want to do this at the very end of the process, right? Usually I tend to ignore those kind of things before, but when I think everything else is done, pelvis is good, root, hip, leg, and everything is working solid, then I can tweak this little popping here and make it really smooth and nice as is necessary. And once the lower part is done, basically I will go to the upper body, right, to the spine. I want to make sure again I have the right amount of twist and rotation what is needed. If you have 3 joints in the FK spine, you can offset those little joints again, so the spine is not going to move all of it together, right? Again, you want to go to the graph editor to make sure there is the extra smoothness. Then another things I like to do, for example, having a bit of squash stretch in the spine. Even though if I'm doing something very realistic, the character is running, climbing, or there is a lot of up and down in the body, I want to make sure that there is a little bit of compression just to make sure the spine feels a bit more organic and not very stiff. You know what I mean, guys? And another things, for example, I'm checking if you have the controller, if you have the option, if the character is breathing. Okay, sometimes another things I used to forget at the beginning, like forgetting the character breathe as well, right? So if you have enough space in your animation, like the character is not moving that much, it's gonna holding still, you can make the character breathe with the chest as well. It's a really extra details that sometimes animators tend to forget about it. And then again, I will move to the upper part of the hierarchy in case the neck and the head. In this case, what I'm going to look first is that the character needs to look where he's supposed to look, okay? Even if you're doing a body mechanic shot, if the character is running and then prepared to jump and landing or something, make sure he's always looking where he's supposed to run, go or land, okay? I know we want to sometimes have overlapping or stuff like that, but it's important that the eye direction of the character is done properly. And most of the time this has to do how the head is tilted, okay? And usually again, when this is done as well, you can have a little bit of compression on the neck, head area, okay, again to make it feel a bit more organic. You can start to offset the controller from the spine as well, so maybe there is a little bit of overshoot, right? Maybe for example, if you're doing a landing, you will do this kind of movement, right? So all those little details, I want to make sure they are there. And obviously don't forget arc in your head as well. I know arc is very sometimes can be annoying, but it's important that you track the arc in your head, especially if you have a very big body mechanic shot. So you can put a locator here around the neck and check the arc, the spacing. You should do with the nose as well, okay? So make sure the arc is very clean when you're moving and everything. So again, I really want to make sure that things are very nice and smooth, or there is no weird pop or unwanted hold. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes I see animator there is a movement from this one to this one that you're supposed to be kind of fast and smooth, but somehow you have the animator scene doing this, and then somehow for a frame the head pop in a very close way, the spacing is very close, and then move again really fast. It creates a very weird pop. So you need to take care of this as well. And then at the end we go to the shoulder for both arms. Again, make sure if you're moving the hands and everything, not all of them are moving at the same time. But again, clavicle is another crucial point, because I see a lot of people doing mistake anatomically. They move the clavicle too much, or they do not moving enough. They do not really support the movement of the arms, right? And it kind of look kind of broken. So first of all, I want to make sure anatomically I'm doing everything correct. And then sometimes I want to exaggerate some of those movements to give extra deformation to the character, okay, really support the movement of the arms. Then again, when animating the entire arms, I will make sure there is a little bit of set from the upper arm here, the forearms and the hands. So I don't want them to move at the same time. For example, if you're doing a swing or something, there needs to be a little bit of a overshoot, okay? So you don't want things to move all together. again cleaning up the elbow and everything, remove all the poppy things, and at the very end usually I will do the hands and finger, right? So first of all I want to make sure that the finger animation, finger pose are really appealing, okay? They're not really spread in a weird way, but I kind of group them together. I find like some nice line of action. I animate those bones here as well. Those are really important as well, I would say, and because it makes this pose of your hands really more natural. And at the same time, when you animate the finger and everything, you don't want to move them, all of them together. You know, sometimes you want to lead the movement with one of your finger and then close the other one, a little bit of overlapping. Again, you have to be careful when you do those things, because there is the risk that if you do those things, your animation start to lose some of the weight. It might look a bit too smooth, okay? So I guess you have to be very careful on what you're doing, and you know, really make sure you're polishing your shot, but you're not losing the energy, the weight, and everything else. Okay, and this is something else you'll have to learn with experience. Many times it happened to me at the beginning that I was so excited and I became so obsessed to make everything smooth in the graph editor that I realized that I lose some of the energy. Like sometimes you need a bit of stiffness, you know, when you want to have a jump or something. So it's really hard to find the balance. And sometimes I screw up, guys. I was making everything so smooth and overlapping, and it looked like nice at first, but now after a while you realize, then I lose all the energy in my animation. This is supposed to be a combat and everything looks so fluid and smooth, and it doesn't look good anymore at the end. So yes, I wanted to share all of this with you. And one more thing I want to give you guys, actually when I check this list, it's not about when I do the polish pass. I'm mostly careful about those things even during my blocking class, okay? So if you look at my demo reel, not my demo reel, sorry, all the other tutorials that I did with you guys here on my channel, and you follow how do I do the blocking plus, there is a key every 2 frames, more or less is every details. I am already mindful of all those things already in the stage, in the sense that when you already have a key every 2 frames, you can already have overlapping, you can already be careful about the clean arc and everything. And if you do your job really well, I can promise you guys, you know, when you do your splitting and polishing, your alpha way there is a lot better. I know, because I teach this to my students, and even though at the beginning they struggle to do the blocking plus, but then when they realize that they go to spline, they tell me, whoa, Alessandro, oh my god, like it actually doesn't look too bad compared to all the other time that I was splining. It actually looks quite solid. I can see that yes, I still need to clean it and polish it, but I don't need to do as much because the mechanics are already there. When usually the mistake that they were doing is that they were doing a blocking that it was done very poorly, and then they go spline too early and look super floaty because there are not enough key, or the key has not been placed in the right spot, and there is a lot of work to do, okay? So for me, actually, as I always said, guys, splining is basically polish, and it's the part that at the end I enjoy, because if the animation is solid, I can really take care of all these extra details that are gonna make your animation shine. Okay, guys? I hope you enjoy. If you find this useful, let me know, or if you have any other suggestion or something, let me know in the comment. See you next time. Ciao.